Emperor Hirohito, Japan's longest-reigning monarch, was a central figure during one of the most turbulent periods in modern history. As sovereign during World War II, his name was invoked in the name of the empire's aggressive expansion across Asia and the Pacific. Yet, in the war's aftermath, Hirohito was not tried as a war criminal, and his role in wartime decision-making has remained a subject of intense historical debate. The central question persists: how much did Emperor Hirohito really know, and to what extent was he responsible for Japan's path to war and its atrocities? A divine symbol in a militarized empire. Born in 1901, Hirohito ascended the throne in 1926 during a time when Japan was growing increasingly militaristic. The emperor was viewed as a living deity under the ideology of state Shinto, and his words carried the weight of divine command. However, Japan's government operated under a constitutional monarchy, meaning that executive powers were technically held by elected ministers and military leaders. By the 1930s, militarists dominated Japanese politics, pursuing aggressive campaigns in China and across Asia. Hirohito presided over a nation engaged in expansionism, but whether he actively directed policy or merely approved it as a figurehead remains contested. Silent acquiescence or quiet architect. When Japanese forces invaded Manchuria in 1931 and later launched a full-scale war against China in 1937, Hirohito did not publicly oppose these moves. He signed off on military orders, approved budgets, and appointed key military leaders. Documents and historical accounts suggest he received regular briefings about military operations and strategy. The Nanjing Massacre, during which hundreds of thousands of Chinese civilians were killed by Japanese troops, occurred with no public condemnation or visible intervention by Hirohito. Many historians argue that he was well informed about such atrocities and had the authority, if not the absolute power, to object or intervene. As Japan expanded its empire, Hirohito continued to lend his symbolic authority to the cause. The war was waged in his name, soldiers pledged allegiance to him, and propaganda emphasized loyalty to the emperor above all else. The road to Pearl Harbor. Leading up to the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941, Hirohito was closely involved in high-level discussions. Meeting records show that he was briefed about deteriorating U.S.-Japan relations and approved Japan's decision to go to war. Although some argue he was a passive participant, there is evidence that Hirohito questioned certain strategies but ultimately deferred to his military commanders, without ever using his position to prevent war. By allowing, and in many cases approving, aggressive policies, Hirohito became complicit in Japan's decision to launch a surprise attack on the United States and expand its war across the Pacific. The surrender and post-war protection. Perhaps Hirohito's most defining moment came not during the height of the war, but at its end. After the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, Hirohito made an unprecedented decision. He personally intervened to end the war. In a radio broadcast known as the Gyokuon Hoso, he addressed the Japanese people for the first time, calling for surrender and saying, "We have decided to effect a settlement of the present situation." This rare act of initiative likely spared Japan from complete destruction and avoided a bloody Allied invasion of the home islands. In the post-war years, U.S. General Douglas MacArthur, who led the occupation of Japan, made a controversial decision. Hirohito would not be tried for war crimes. Instead, he would be retained as a symbol of continuity to help stabilize and rebuild the nation. The Tokyo War crimes trials focused on military and political leaders, but the emperor was kept above scrutiny. This move helped prevent civil unrest in Japan, but it also shielded Hirohito from accountability and clouded the historical record of his wartime role.